Hi guys! Welcome to another episode of First Chapter Friday. This week I am bringing you Gary Paulsen's My Life in Dog Years. This is another form of autobiography. Since we've been talking a lot about memoirs and autobiographies and what the difference of those two things are, this is not a memoir because like our story that we're reading, I will always write back. This is an autobiography because it covers a longer length of time. And the cool thing about this one is that Gary Paulsen has wrote the story of his life through his ownership of dogs. So each chapter is a different dog. So I'm going to read for you the first chapter here. This is titled Cookie. There's a picture of Cookie. She's pretty cute. And this is actually the dedication. So we're going to just learn a little bit about Cookie and kind of get the beginning of his story here. And if you want to read more, reach out. I've got a copy of this book in my classroom library. So if I get to see you as one of my hybrid students, it's available for you to glance through it, see if it's something that you might be interested in reading. It definitely doesn't read like a traditional autobiography. So it's kind of cool because you feel like you're reading a very fictional story, and it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around the fact that this is a true story and this really happened to Gary Paulsen. If you're not sure who Gary Paulsen is, he's the author of the Hatchet series. So if you've read Hatchet, that book actually came up on a lot of our book shopping slides. A lot of you wanted to hear Hatchet for First Chapter Friday. So I thought, what better way to branch into something brand new and also still kind of talk about some of the things that we've been working on in the last couple weeks in class than to combine both. So here is Cookie, which is the dedication of Gary Paulsen's My Life in Dog Years. Though I read sled dogs for close to 10 years, did some 22,000 miles with them, this book is not about sled dogs or running them. They were truly wonderful, and I have written of them in other books. This book is about other dogs in my life and other times. Excuse me. I say this with some pride and not a little wonder, a dog person. I make no excuses for unabashedly loving them, all of them, even some that have bitten me. I have always had dogs and will have dogs until I die. I have rescued dozens of dogs from pounds, always have 5 or 6 of them around me, and cannot imagine living without dogs. They are wonderful and, I think, mandatory for a decent human life. All that said, there are some dogs that are different, special, in amazing ways. Josh is one, and you'll read about him later in this book. Cookie was another. Cookie was my lead dog when I first started to run dogs, and she was also my lead dog in my first Iditarod sled dog race. She took me from Anchorage to Nome, Alaska, when most people, including me, thought I couldn't do it. But she was more. She was a good friend, a kind of dog sister or dog mother to me. And while I haven't written much of her in other places, she belongs in this book too. Cookie was given to me by a man who thought she was so sick she couldn't run any longer. She merely had worms, and when I wormed her, she became a wonderful sled dog and then a wonderful lead dog. I did not set out to race dogs. I used them for work. I brought in wood with them, went to the laundromat in town with them. It was grand to tie dogs up to the parking meter and watch people jump as they walked by, and trapped with them. Side note, trapping would be like hunting, setting hunting traps. In January of 1980, I was running a 75-mile line trapping beaver. I had previously trapped with a friend, but this year I was trapping alone. Not the wisest thing to do, since there's some risk from bad ice or injuries, and it's better to have a companion. I was alone when I made a mistake that nearly killed me. The ice around beaver lodges is very dangerous. Beavers live in their lodges and come out of underwater tunnels to get food they have stored at the bottom of the river or pond through the summer, in the form of branches stuck down in the mud. Each time they come out, they let air out of their noses, and it goes up to make bubbles under the surface of the ice. And this, along with the beavers rubbing their backs on the underside of the ice, keeps the ice very thin near a beaver lodge. It can be 50 below with 2-foot thick ice around the whole lake, and the ice near the lodge might be less than a quarter-inch thick. I had parked the sled near a lodge and unpacked the gear needed to set a group of snares. Cookie was leading the work team of 5 dogs, and they knew the procedure completely by this time. As soon as I stopped the sled and began to unpack, they all lay down, curled their tails over their noses, and went to sleep. The process could take 2 or 3 hours, and they used the time to get rest. A rope tied the cargo to the sled. I threw the rope across the ice to get it out of the way. One end was still tied to the sled. I took a step on the ice near the rope and went through and down like a stone. You think there is time to react, that the ice will give way slowly and you'll be able to hang onto the edge, somehow able to struggle to safety. It's not that way at all. It's as if you were suddenly standing on air. The bottom drops out and you go down. I was wearing heavy clothing and a parka. It gathered water like a sponge and took me down faster. 2 things saved me. One, as I went down, my hand fell across the rope I had thrown across the ice, which was still tied to the sled. 2, as I dropped, I had time to yell. Scream, really. And the last thing I saw as I went under was Cookie's head swinging up from sleeping and her eyes locking on mine as I went beneath the surface. The truth is, I shouldn't have lived. I had several friends killed in just this manner, dropping through the ice while running dogs, and there wasn't much of a chance for me. The water was 10 or 12 feet deep. I saw all the bubbles from my clothing going up to the surface, and I tried to pull myself up on the rope. My hand slipped, and I thought in a wild mental scream of panic that this was how it would end. Then the rope tightened. There was a large noose knot on the end, and it tightened and started pulling up, and when the knot hit, I grabbed and held, and the dogs pulled me out of the hole and back up onto the ice. There was still very little time. I had a quart of white gas stove fuel on the sled for emergencies, and I threw it on a pine tree nearby and lit a match and set the whole tree on fire, and in the heat got my clothes off and crawled into a sleeping bag. I stood inside it and held my clothes near the flame to dry them. I would have died if not for Cookie. She saw me drop, instantly analyzed the situation, got the team up. She must have jerked them to their feet, got them pulling, and they pulled me out. That was January 1980. It is now 1997 as I write this, and everything that has happened in the last 17 years, everything, Iditarods, publishing books, love, living, life, all of it, including this book, I owe to Cookie. This book is dedicated to her memory. And that's the conclusion of the dedication for My Life in Dog Years by Gary Paulsen, the author of the Hatchet series. If you want to read more, reach out. I'd love to share this book with you. I think you'll truly enjoy it and not at all even know that it's a nonfiction autobiography. Until then, see you Monday. Bye.